Hi friends, I shared in my last vlog a Google form with you, a Google form that allows you to ask me any questions, whether it be regarding teaching or just anything that I've ever talked about in a prior video, and I said that I would create a vlog answering them. Well, today is that vlog. Let's call it the Hey Alexa vlog because my name is Alexa. Why not? And you guys, I have not yet actually opened up the responses to my Google form. There might be 0 questions, hence I will not be uploading this video. There will not be a video. I really don't know what to expect, so let's do this together. I can't wait to see your questions. I will answer them the best that I can. You know, maybe I should introduce myself. I am Alexa Borota. I have been teaching for 10.5 years, middle school, high school, and I'm just here right now answering any questions you have. If I'm going to do this, I need to be comfortable, you know what I'm saying? Eventually, I'm sure this will take place in my classroom, but I'm on summer break right now, and I just want to chill, and I just want to answer your questions, and this is the most comfortable place in the whole house. And another reason I love it is that my kiddos are right across from me, so I can hear everything they're doing. Just another day in the life of a multitasking mom. Seriously, like, what if I'm doing all of this and nobody even asked a question? So I had to take a week break because I went to Mexico. It was so much fun. And that put me back a week. So technically it's been 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I haven't checked to see if anybody responded to my last vlog with questions. I'm clicking on forms right now. What if it says 0? Don't think like that. Don't think like that. I have experienced this with me. Two questions. This question is from Nuvia. Nuvia is from Honduras. Hey now. Here's the question. How can I engage ESL students in literature? What tips can you give me to encourage kids to read? Thanks for your content. It is useful. Thank you, Nubia. I love answering questions regarding ESL students, and it's not that I'm an ESL expert. However, I do have my ESL certification, and I do have experience teaching English as a second language. I taught it in Costa Rica. I taught it for much longer in China. And my first 3.5 years teaching where I teach now, I used to teach bilingual language arts. And I share this with you because I have so much experience with English language learners. Here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to do what has disappointed me so much over the years. I've been to so many workshops and professional development trainings, and I would go into it thinking, okay, I'm going to come out with tools and I'm going to come out with something that's going to better help me teach my students who are learning how to speak English. But then that wouldn't happen. I would be given percentages and data, statistics, and all of that, and you know, an explanation of why it's important that we differentiate for those students. That is all important. That is all necessary. But I would get frustrated because I would constantly leave these workshops with nothing under my belt that I could put into practice like the next day. So I'm not going to do that to you. Now, I'm not given a grade level or age, and that is important in going into this question. You know, when I taught in China, I taught little kids, kindergartners, first graders, second graders, and then I taught middle school, and now I'm teaching high school. So the way that I would go about engaging students in reading is different. For now, I'm going to give some specific strategic tips that I feel apply to all the grade levels, because check this out. In high school, if you have newcomer English language learners, a lot of the tips that apply to smaller children do apply to teenagers. It's the material, it's the content that changes, and you know, the delivery. If you're an ESL teacher, or if you have English language learners in your classroom, or if you have students who just really struggle in learning, I'm going to go grab a book. Well, I have a couple of books. I'm going to go grab 1 or 2 books. I want to show you, please look into the SCUP model. SCUP in my beginning years absolutely saved me. I believe that a lot of school districts are adopting this SCIOP model. Let me go grab these books. BRB. I highly suggest these books or something like it. These are pretty old. I've been using these since the beginning, and I still find myself going to them now. SCIOP, S-I-O-P. It's basically just an acronym. It's a model that differentiates, scaffolds, engages, breaks down reading, not just reading and writing, but any content area for students who are learning the language. And I find that SCIOP works in my regular mainstream classroom as well. So just so you know, a lot of the tips that I'm going to be giving you today, they are found somewhere in probably 99 ideas and activities for teaching English language learners. When you practice the SCIOP model so often, it kind of just takes hold of your teaching and you do it naturally. Not sponsored content, by the way. I have to start off by saying that engaging ESL students in wanting to read is no different than engaging anybody else to want to read. If you feel like you are struggling, some of those reasons might not be that they're ESL. We do live in a digital age. It's pretty ubiquitous nowadays for young kids to have problems with reading if they're given screens at home and things like that. So take that for what it's worth before I move on. You need really good questions, right? You need to be able to, depending on the age group, if you teach older kids, you need to be able to contextualize that text in a way that relates to their real life. With younger kids, doesn't necessarily have to relate to real life, but as they get older, if they can't relate to it in some way, it's very difficult, unless it's highly, highly entertaining content, it's difficult to get them engaged. First thing, please survey your students. Get an idea of what their interests are. Of course, their interests will vary. You might already have an idea of what they're interested in. Start off with something that they're interested in and grab texts related to that. Next, engage them with some thought-provoking questions. Just saying, AI is here and AI is not going anywhere. If you feel like you're stuck, like I'm talking like baseline level, you really don't know what to ask, ask AI. Log into ChatGPT, find your text first and provide ChatGPT with the age group and ask, what are some really great questions to get my students curious about this book? And, make sure the reading level's in there or the language level's in there so that ChatGPT knows what kind of questions to offer you. I think that would be a great starting point. That's not in the SCIOP book. That's just from experience of teaching. Now, here's something that I learned very quickly teaching ESL. Less is more. I'm going to speak to you as if you're a new teacher, okay? And if you're not, I apologize, but I'm going into it in this way. And you're going to feel like the curriculum and all the things that you have to teach, it's going to feel like a lot. And you might feel like you really just have to teach it all. But less is more. If you read the entire text in English with an ESL population, they're going to lose interest, I imagine, because it's too much to comprehend. It's too much. So, depending on everything revolves around their proficiency level. I'm being very vague here, because I'm trying to reach like kind of a broad audience. Before you deliver any kind of a lesson, whether it's reading related or not, come up with a list of vocabulary words. Let's just say 5. I wouldn't do too many. You really need to teach that core vocabulary first, the vocabulary that you know is going to be used in the reading. That way, when they come across the vocabulary words, they are familiar with it. And, when you teach the vocabulary words, what comes with vocabulary? Visuals and conversation and all of that. So tip number 1, to make reading more engaging for your ESL students, front load them with vocabulary. You could play games with the vocabulary. I'm not going to turn this into a vlog about vocabulary, but you have to start with the major vocabulary words first. Tip number 2 definitely comes from SCIOP somewhere, one of these books. chunking the text. You really have to discern for yourself as a teacher what is too much and what is too little. There's a lot of different ways to go into reading a text, you know. In my experience, I have had the most success with taking a piece, just a piece, reading it, doing certain work, closely reading what's in it, and then reading it again, and then moving on. I will never forget one of my most successful lessons, okay? When I taught, it was called Sheltered Language Arts, but really it was just bilingual language arts. I taught English language learners. Now I had newcomers, they barely spoke any English. And then, you know, I had a bit higher level. They weren't yet ready to be in mainstream classes yet, but you know, they spoke a pretty decent amount of English. They were great. My 8th graders read The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. That is tough. That is tough for them. Oh my goodness. The first time that I taught it, I remember thinking, oh my God, we are going to spend a whole month on one text. It's not, I don't mind that, but it's boring. Like, I'm worried that they're going to get bored. You can only talk about one text and one author for so long, and I didn't want to steer away to anything else because that would just add to the time that it took to read The Telltale Heart. So I'm like, you know, what do I do? The second time around was much better, and I used SCUP strategies. The first thing that I did was I found an animated version of The Telltale Heart on YouTube, and I played it for them before we read it. Now, I'd already front-loaded them with vocabulary, and we had talked about the plot, but before we actually started reading, I played it for them. That made all the difference, because now, as we are going to read sections of The Telltale Heart, they can connect the words with what they saw. And when I say chunking the text, just to be more specific with you, I'm going to give you a specific example. One way that I would chunk the text is I would say, okay, give me the whole setting. I'm going to chunk, it could be 1 paragraph, 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. To be honest with you, I don't remember. But I'm going to chunk together that entire setting, and we're only going to focus on the setting for however long I feel we need to focus on it for. And that's it. We stop until we are ready to move on with, you know, rising action. And then I will chunk the climax, and then I will chunk, it just goes on and on. You kind of see what I'm doing here. Another perk to chunking the text is it allows for you, you know, your warm up that day could be 1, 2, or 3 vocabulary words that come up in the text that you are chunking to read with them. So hopefully that helps. A lot of what keeps students engaged is confidence in reading aloud, confidence in that they are understanding and that they are making connections between what's actually happening and what they're reading. You oftentimes question yourself. You don't want to speak aloud. It takes a certain amount of confidence to get that momentum running in these classes. So front-loading with vocabulary, chunking the text really helps out with that confidence and speaking. Because if you're not taking it in small steps, you might be asking for a very silent class. My third tip for teaching reading to ESL students is repetition. As you are chunking the text and as you are getting through the story, if you are asking completely different questions that elicit completely different responses to ESL students, that could be a problem, because it's like they're constantly processing new questions and they're constantly processing how they can go about answering those questions. And again, you know, it goes back to confidence. They enjoy speaking, and I'm just going to go ahead and say it, learning when they're confident that they understand what's happening and they're confident what's coming out of their mouth. So as you are preparing your book or your whatever it is that you're reading with them, decide on 1 to 3. I would not do any more than 3 questions that you're going to ask them, and provide some sentence stems, sentence starters, maybe some fill in the blank sentences. You have to ask yourself, how am I going to want them to respond to these questions? You have to think about their responses and try to elicit some similar responses throughout the entirety of the text. I'll give you a specific example. In the Telltale Heart, maybe I want to focus on getting my ESL or my English language learners to focus on how the narrator and how the old man are both similar and different. I'm not going to ask this question one time. I'm going to ask this question throughout the entire text. And I will have maybe a sentence stem, a sentence starter, some kind of fill in the blank up on the board, or something that we've just practicing over and over again that says something like, they are similar because they both, and then fill in the blank. That's like a lower level type question. The better their languages that they're learning, you know, the deeper you can go into with your questioning. But the main takeaway here is repetition when you're dealing with English language learners. Nuvia, I hope that helps. Cheers to you in your teaching. I'm ready for question 2. How about you? All right. Question 2 comes from Adriana, another pretty name from North Carolina. All right, and Adriana's question is as follows. In your last video, you mentioned the classroom management checklist. Can you please do a video where you explain how this looks in your classroom? I am so lost with classroom management and procedures, also the planning piece of delivering lessons. Okay, this is packed with questions within questions. Don't feel overwhelmed, or at least don't think that you're the only one who feels overwhelmed, because it's just like a lot for every teacher on this planet. One of the problems with creating how classroom management looks in the classroom is that it could be a very, 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 very long vlog, because I always say it's true, one size doesn't fit all. You can take one of my ideas, sounds great, and it is great to me, but then you try it and for some reason it just doesn't vibe with your school or your personality or the group of students that you have. There's so much to it. For example, there's this principal that I talk to from time to time, and he recently left a comment on one of my videos. I'm talking about the video that you watched where you saw the checklist, and his comment was, you know, it starts with delivering engaging lessons, and he's absolutely right. That's a whole video on its own, right? Classroom management does, you know, a big piece of that are the lessons that you deliver. That's a whole vlog. I can't give that all to you right now, but I can give you a couple pieces of advice. The best thing that you can do is turn this all off. Turn me off, turn off social media, turn off all the things, because we're just front loading you with so many ideas. Ideas are great. I remember the first time I was on Pinterest, I thought Pinterest was the best. And then I started planning a wedding, and I was so overwhelmed with what was out there that my own fantastic ideas didn't even come until I just started ignoring Pinterest. I suggest as soon as possible, in terms of like when you're ready to get some work done, you know, grab your favorite beverage, light a candle or something, get in a comfy area, and just ask yourself, how do I want my classroom to run? When I was a middle school teacher, my students had to be lined up at the door. I didn't let them just walk in, because I felt like they were walking in on me. Okay, they needed to wait for me to open my door so I could stand there and greet them as they came in. That doesn't fly with all teachers. Some teachers hate that idea. Ask yourself, what could go wrong? What are some issues that could happen within the day? For example, maybe students won't know where to find something. How will my students know how I want them to put their devices back? Ask yourself questions like that and just start answering them. That is classroom management. If you want them to be able to use your room for something. Now, this really just goes by age. Like when I was in middle school, there used to be something on the door. I would give students these little survey tickets where they had to answer a question. Any question I asked them that had to do with the lesson. I kept it very, very, very simple. And I'd give them this little piece of paper, and on their way out the door, it was like red, yellow, and green. And they had to put their piece of paper. Red meant, I don't get it. Yellow meant, I kind of get it. And green meant, I get it. Now, am I going to do that with my high schoolers? I don't think so. I mean, I could do something like that, but not that, you know what I'm saying? You know, use the checklist. That's why I created this checklist for you, so that, you know, if you don't know what questions to ask, I've got them for you. And honestly, there are so many more. Small groups, that's part of classroom management. How do you want small groups to go? It took me years to figure small groups out. I need to go back and make a video for how I finally feel like I figured out small groups the best way that I could in middle school while it's all fresh in my head. So in addition to the, you know, creating a comfortable zone, positive vibe for yourself, and making a list of procedures for yourself. In addition to that, I'll also be a little more specific with you. First, decide on what you want your first 5 to 10 minutes to look like in your class every single day. You must be consistent with this if you don't want to pull your hair out. I'm not going to go in any greater detail about that because I did so in my last vlog. So if you just want to revisit that one piece, I give examples of what I do with my students, but that's my first piece of advice. Find out right now, figure it out for yourself, how you want those 5 to 10 minutes to look every single day. Next, know how you're going to manage behavior. I'm just going to say it. You know, because at any point, you know, you're sharing procedures and expectations, you're getting started on group work. At any point, something can go wrong. So it's really important right up front to know what you're going to do about that. I would start off, a really great starting point. I want you to go into Google and I want you to type in consequence ladder systems. And that's a good starting point. You might not necessarily like what you see. Maybe it's too elementary, maybe it's too complicated, maybe it's not enough, but it's a starting point. I don't believe in covering my walls. So many teachers cover their walls and things. I used to be that teacher. I feel that when you have too much up, it goes unnoticed. But if there's one thing that you should have up there on big poster, board, whatever, your consequence system. Maybe it looks like first offense, second offense, third offense. That way you don't have to keep repeating yourself. You could just point and it's, you know, it all looks the same. You're not picking favorites. It looks the same for everyone. And finally, cell phones are going to be an issue. Develop a cell phone management system for yourself. I even created an entire vlog around my cell phone incentive plan. I love my cell phone incentive. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Check it out. Maybe you'll like it too, or maybe you have something better up your sleeve that better suits you. But, you know, be ready for students to be trying to pull out those cell phones, and be ready with what you are going to do about it when they do. Now, the planning piece of delivering lessons, there's a reason why we lesson plan, right? There are a lot of different templates out there. I'm sure your district has one that they probably want you to use. With the more experience you have teaching, it just kind of becomes second nature. It really does. But in the beginning, it's important, I think, that you take your time and go through that template. That template is going to answer this question, the planning piece of delivering lessons. For example, you know, it's going to ask you, what's your warm-up? Have planned what your warm-up is. It's going to ask, hey, what are your vocabulary words for the day that you're going to focus on? You're going to have those words. It's going to be your reminder that, you know, you start your lesson with your direct instruction, and then you do a little bit of work with your students, and then you kind of let them go. How will you differentiate today? What do you want your closing question to be? And you're going to have a list of your materials. What you're going to want to do is take your time in your actual lesson planning, and that is going to help you in your delivery. And as time goes on, much of this is just going to become second nature. You're like anything else. You're just kind of going to know. Adriana, don't burn yourself out with trying to master all of the classroom management strategies. I promise you it will get easier with every year. Don't try to manage it all at the same time. Just start planning. Don't expect perfection. None of us are perfect. Be adaptable to different situations, because as teachers, we have to be adaptable and flexible. And lastly, just have a positive attitude. Have those things. You will be great with classroom management. Good luck to you. That's it. If anybody else has a question, just fill out that Hey Alexa form. Link is in the description box, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody. Happy beginning of the school year.